recording link today along with the homework assignment. And if you have to leave early, it's a great way to stay caught up, or for Shannon, for Lucas, it's a great way for them to catch on to the train. As I mentioned when we met in person a week ago, and Ken talked about it too, market force is more than styles, and part of the reason that we do it in a series is so that we can lay this out as a bit of a system for you and give you a chance to practice with the individual tools as we go. So even if you don't like the entire system, you find at least something to help improve your business and help you make more money. So what we're going to do today is we're going to spend a little bit of time just catching up on styles, see what questions you have, comments, go through the homeworks a little bit, because we seem to have a bit of a breakdown between characters on Breaking Bad. Some of you thought Walter White's an authority, and somebody thought that he's a control. So we may need to argue that out for a minute, because it's incredibly important to figure that out. But after we get through the style stuff, we are then going to move into some new material for the last hour and 15 minutes or so. And so that'll start giving you guys an idea of where this material goes past styles. Okay? So that's kind of the agenda. Let me just take you through it 2 minutes on what we did last week, and it really will be two minutes, but it'll be slightly different slides for you to just take a look at. And the consideration I want you in is just to start to see how these things fit together. Because a lot of times they look like individual tools, which they are. You can pull a tool out, but we also want you to start to see how these things fit together. And the initial premise, the driver behind market forces, is that business is a game for identity. Human beings generally got life and death figured out. So we got bored or anxious, I don't know, and we invented a game called business. And what underlies business is this idea that you have to create, establish, maintain, and preserve an identity. And it's the only game on the planet that you have to play. Any other game on the planet you don't have to play. And as a few of you noted in your homeworks, it's a unique game. It's the only game on the planet that the only way to win the game is to help somebody else win their game. And that's what makes it such a virtuous proposition. Now, the other thing about the game that's important to understand is that everybody on this call is producing an identity, or has produced. Even for Chris Luxton, only here 10 days, people are already starting to say something about Chris. He's the kind of guy who, or whatever. And so you're already in this game, and what we want you to realize is you are who other people say you are, not who you say you are, but you can design what they say. But in order for that to happen, you have to have your identity in language so that you're planting the seed. Once you get out there in this game, you look around and you realize that your identity is up to you, and the only way to grow your identity is to grow other people's identity. And again, that's what makes it one of the coolest games on the planet. Unfortunately, most of us play this game like it's life or death, and that means that you have habits of protecting your identity the same way you have habits to protect your life. And it's just not a life or death game. You could get fired today, you could lose all your money, and you wouldn't die. And I know that sounds horrible, but it's true. And that's why such a huge number of multimillionaires have gone through bankruptcy or some kind of massive failure, because they at some level learn you don't die. You just dust yourself off and get back in the game and regrow your identity. Once you start getting an appreciation for that, you look around and you really start realizing that how humans behave around risk becomes somewhat predictable. First of all, for you. Second of all, like for Chris Luxton with his girlfriend. And then we start worrying about our clients. And once you start internalizing this towards your clients, you start having a way and something that other people don't have to help you make more money. Because what you can start doing is repackaging a little bit. You don't run a meeting with a control person the same way you do with an influence person. Or if you do not complain to Ken or to me when it doesn't work. There is no one-size-fits-all. What you have to be able to do is increase your versatility. You can't do that if you run every meeting targeting it how it would work for you, which is what most people do under pressure. They run the meetings that work for them. They don't run the meeting that works for the other person. And the best example of that is what we talked about as it relates to trust. Most people focus on either competence or sincerity first, depending on their primary driver, and you got a 50-50 shot whether or not that's the other guy's primary driver. So the more you practice with this, the more versatility you gain, the quicker you're able to build powerful relationships with other people. Okay? So that's what we did. Any burning questions off of any of that, any sticking points before we just spend just a couple minutes on the couple of homeworks that I got? Anybody have any burning questions or comments off of anything we already did?
Nope.
Okay. What's interesting is, first thing to note is, of the homeworks I received, and kind of a difficult question, but maybe not, just, does anybody have an intuition? What do you think are the typical styles that come out as the easiest to work with, and the most typical styles that come out as the hardest to work with? Does anybody have an intuition around that?
I would guess power is the easiest.
Yeah. So power typically right at the top, followed closely by what somebody else said, which was influence. And what you want to notice is, look at that. They're both the sincerity-based styles. Does that surprise anybody?
No.
No. And which are the two styles that always come back as the hardest to work with? Well, the confidence-based styles. Okay? So even right there, you're getting some social evidence. From the homeworks that I received, difficult for Lucas was, well, actually, Lucas, somewhat surprising, influence, he said. His analysis on that was interesting. Lucas said he's more towards an influence style, and that if he doesn't get anything done when he works with another influence, which was good analysis. Audrey, you too said difficult was influence, so you guys are like breaking the pattern. But Audrey, do you see yourself more as a power or a control, would you say?
Probably power.
Yeah. Well, your indicator came out as that, and a lot of times for power, what drives you crazy about influence people, Audrey? Can you generalize it at all?
Just not getting things done.
Yeah. Okay, so that is typically the biggest complaint for power people overall, is that other people just won't put their nose to the grindstone and work. But if you look at an influence person doing that kind of routine type stuff, you know, getting things into just follow through routine can be tough on influence people. Richard said that the difficult style for him to work with was authority, which, Richard, you just tell me when I'm supposed to be offended. As an authority guy. But what was your take on why it's difficult to work with authorities, Richard?
I feel like authorities sort of focus too much on the history of things, where as a power, I feel like I could work well with influences and thinking of new ideas and collaborating rather than focusing on stuff that's already happened and using stats and stuff like that.
Yep. And what's interesting about that is you know, you're going to presumably see over time, Richard, that is the one that biologically drives you crazy, doing this research and looking backwards. And remember what we were talking about last week, that to the extent you learn to go to the right, we actually find that it helps us individually. So in your case, Richard, it might be useful for you to learn how to work with an authority person, mostly to just make sure that the hard work that you're putting in naturally as a power person is paying off. The biggest breakdown for power is they do a lot of work, but they forget to prioritize the work, so they don't do the right things first. Does that make sense? Look, that's a general comment, so I'm not saying you're doing that.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. So that's, you know, part of the reason we ask those guys is so you can learn, you know, which styles are perturbing your biology the most, which styles are triggering you the most, and then over time it may change. You may learn, Richard, for example, how to work better with authorities, and then influences start driving you crazy. It's never going to, you know, it's not going to stay the same. But this is just starting to get you past looking at people like a set of problems and looking at them like a set of concerns. And if you can address their concerns, you can move quicker. That's the concept. Okay? Now, the last thing we need to do is figure this out as it relates to Walter White on Breaking Bad. Do all of you guys, because I actually haven't watched Breaking Bad, so you guys are going to have to break the tie. Did a bunch of you watch that show?
Yeah.
No.
All right, so a few of us. So let's see. What's this? So Richard, actually, back to you. You were saying that Walter White is control, and I think it was Audrey. You said he's an authority.
I did, but I've been thinking about it since then, and I actually think he is more of a control.
Aha! Okay, so we don't have to.
I've been thinking about this. But then when I watched an episode, I thought harder about it.
Very good. Okay. Well, so anyways, now we don't have to break the ties. So Richard, you won. You didn't even have to make your case.
There you go.
Very good. All right, you guys. The key on styles is practice. If you want to bring any real-time examples that you have from clients that you have or other situations that you have going on, please feel free to bring those to, well, either later this meeting or the next meeting. But for all intents and purposes, what we're going to do is we're going to move off of styles at least for a little bit today and take a look at something different. Okay? So if you would, in your workbooks there, turn to session 3 and flip to the conversation on language. And what we're going to do is spend about 20 minutes here, maybe a little more if there are questions. And I will tell you guys right now, this is the easiest thing we give out. The easiest thing we give out. But I still have people call me 5, 10 years after doing something like what you're doing right now, and they tell me that this was just as impactful as anything else they learned. What you will begin to notice as you try this one on is you will look around at other people, and a lot of people do not get what we are about to go through. And in the absence of understanding what we're about to go through, they waste a tremendous amount of time and energy, and it causes a lot of suffering. So see what you guys think as we go through this. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about language. And we're going to talk about language, and I'm going to use language to do it. And as I'm talking out loud, each one of you is going to be talking to yourselves. And that is all going to be taking place in language. So the initial thing we have to do is at least put out there that talking to human beings about language is like trying to talk to this goldfish about water. And Adam, when do you suppose a goldfish completely gets that it's surrounded by water?
When it's breathing?
Well, what's interesting, they actually use water to breathe. So, in a weird way, if they breathe inside water, live inside water, when do you suppose would be the only time, ironically, that they get that they're surrounded by water?
Oh, when they're out of water.
There you go.
Right.
Now, fish don't have language, so far as we know, so the fish wouldn't actually be able to do this, but if he did have language, as soon as he's out of the water, he'd go, hey, could somebody throw me back in? That stuff I completely take for granted. I need it to breathe. Throw me back in. So what we want to do, Adam and all of you guys, is suspend reality for 20 minutes and have you pull out of language. So check the language going off inside your head. Just put it all aside and just observe what is language and what do we use it for. So that when you jump back in, even after this meeting is over, you're going to have a way to think about what you need to do today a little differently as it relates to your language. And the initial thing, Adam, stay with you for one more minute, is we claim that language is a technology. Any intuition, Adam, on why that might be an important thing to understand?
So you can understand how to break it down.
True. And why do you want to be able to break it down?
I guess ultimately so you can understand where other people are coming from, their point of view.
Yeah, it can help in that. It can help in that, for sure. It can help you it can actually help you identify styles a little bit, but even more than that, and this is important, you guys, what it signals to me is how ambitious a person is. So over and above their style, start to give you an idea about ambition. What about its usage? Why is it important to understand that something's a technology, do you think, Adam, in terms of being able to use it?
If it breaks down, you know how to fix it. You can start to understand how to fix it.
No, that's true. Okay, if it breaks down, you can figure out how to fix it. What a lot of people say is it evolves. So just like any technology, it evolves over time, which is true too. We think the most important thing, however, about understanding that language is a technology is that any technology had to be invented. So there was a day zero, Adam, that we didn't have language. We were still on this planet trying to coordinate the action to produce accomplishment, growth, and prosperity. We were still trying to get things done, get across the glacier, get away from saber-toothed tigers, whatever it was. And then from day zero to day one, we invented language. And it exploded our capacity to coordinate action. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. So it's like, you know, for Ken Norris and me, we're the only guys that probably know what this is in this group. But, you know, 50 years ago, the technology that we used for long-distance communication looked like this typewriter. Now, you guys all laugh at that. But at the time, that was a significant technological breakthrough, and it allowed us to, you know, do a lot more in a lot less time. Nowadays, of course, we use laptops and tablets, and it's evolved. 100 years ago, if you guys had been doing this market force course, you know, long distance, you think it's hard now. Imagine doing it in Morse code. Trying to take notes in Morse code, it would have been impossible. Well, you know, nowadays we use video conferencing and all this other stuff. And just like I was saying to Adam, we all get it. We all get it when we talk about computer technology, that stuff evolves. But what we want you to understand is that language is also a technology, and it too had to be invented, and it's evolving. And in this day and age, if you don't evolve how you use I can walk into a team and listen to them for a half an hour, and I can already make a prediction on how much money they're making. Okay? And people will actually have me come to meetings just to listen in, and, you know, pretty quickly I can make a, you know, pretty good deduction. And that's because I know how to listen to the language that's being used. So let me pick on somebody else here. Let's see, Alex, you're there.
Yes,
Alex, do you use a laptop?
I do.
All right. Now, don't make fun of my game, but do you play any video games, if not solitaire? Do you play any video games on your laptop?
I don't.
No.
You
It's
want me
so
to
funny.
say
I always pick the person who doesn't play any video games, which is fine. Okay?
I don't watch Breaking Bad either. I'm that person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I could say yes, though.
Okay, but even hypothetically,
Okay.
if you were to play a video game on your computer, like solitaire, I know people make fun of me. I got to update because I'm getting to be the old guy. I get it. But if you were to play solitaire on your computer, why would you be doing it, Alex?
Because I'm bored, maybe.
Yeah. Bored.
Um,
What other reasons might you do it?
Give me something to do to exercise my brain, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, you might do it for stress relief. You might do it because you're waiting for a call back. You might be bored. You might be anxious, right? I mean, all of these are good reasons to do it.
Right.
Now, if you were to win 100 games of solitaire in a row, would you then go log into your bank account and expect to see more money?
Am I playing for like cash? That's basically what
No.
It is not a betting. So no, I would not.
No. Okay, right answer.
All right.
Now, you also use your laptop to generate proposals, do spreadsheets, do whatever you need to do to deal with clients, right?
Right.
You would expect, assuming that you do it well, that using your technology to do that kind of stuff would lead to more money in your bank account, right?
Correct.
Yes. So you guys, what if language is like your computer? What if it came with multiple uses? And what if most people have them collapsed? And what if most people use the type of language that is like playing a video game, and yet they think they're going to open their bank account and see more money? And we all laugh, like, Travis, that's such a ridiculous question. When you ask Alex if she wins 100 games of solitaire, would she expect to see any money? But why is it that people cannot make the connection that language is a technology, and if you use the technology for things that are for stress relief and boredom and things like that, why do people think they're going to make more money? It's ridiculous. Do not be that person. So what we try to show you here, you guys, it is very simple. This game is incredibly simple. It's not trivial. That doesn't mean there's not nuance. I get it. But generally speaking, we are all trying to make more money on this dirtball hurtling through space in this game of identity. And we told you prosperity is equal parts wealth and wisdom. Money and knowledge for the benefit of a community. The only way to produce prosperity is to grow. The last time I checked, if you're breaking even, that ain't prosperity. That's break even. The only way to grow is to produce more accomplishment than you could produce yesterday in the exact same amount of time. Accomplishment is when you get X done by time frame Y, and nobody gives a shit for your story why it didn't happen. And the only way to produce accomplishment is to coordinate the action, which means even if you work by yourself, you have to send emails to your clients, you have to talk to them on the phone. If you're on a team, you've got to ask somebody else on your team to do something. All of that coordination of action, all of that collaboration, because you are a human being, is going to take place in language. That is the technology that we invented. So remind yourself, so you never forget this, draw a horizontal line between coordination of action and language, and above the line, write down all other social creatures. And as ridiculous as that sounds, we've got to drive this point home. Every other social creature on this planet is in the same progression we are, to coordinate action, to produce accomplishment, to grow so that they can live and prosper. We are the only ones that invented technology, or invented language, and it's a huge sociological advantage over other creatures on this planet. If you were to go outside and look at an example of another social creature, you would see bees and ants, and they coordinate action in something called trophallaxis. It is a body chemical. There is no language that is used. It is an absolute one-trick technology. It did not come with any other uses. So even if you were to step on the line of ants, they would scatter for about 5 seconds, and then they would go right back to coordinating action. It has no other capability to it. So you would never see a group of ants pull over to the side and start launching into, hey, things aren't working well around here, we need to unionize, someday when I'm the queen ant, things are going to work better. It can't happen. And that doesn't make us better or them worse or them better and us worse. It's just different. We invented in our technology something that has multiple uses. And most people have them collapsed. So this is the important part of the conversation. If you've tuned out at all, just tune back in. There are 2 types of language. And once you see this, you'll never forget it. You will never forget it, and you will look around and be stunned at the number of people who don't get this. Judgmental language is the type of language that is language for no action. Please write that down. Performative language, so that's language, by the way, that is more like playing a video game with your language. Okay, if I can use that metaphor or analogy, whatever it is. Performative language is language for action. And what I want to make very clear, you guys, is we are not putting these in a rank order. Judgmental language is not always better than or always worse than performative. It's about understanding the difference so you can apply timing. My wife and I use a lot of judgmental language. We just have no expectation of performance. The trap is people use judgmental language expecting performance. Okay? So, I know you don't have a ton of room there, but if you don't mind, just somewhere make a little table that looks like this, maybe even right under judgmental and performative, even though you don't have a ton of room. Because what we want to show you is how do you identify each type of language, which becomes more and more important as you learn to listen to people. What is each type of language at its core? And then most importantly, what does each type of language produce? And it's what each type of language produces that is the key takeaway today. Okay? So we're going to start with judgmental. Judgmental language is typically identified about 90% after the words but or because. And what you want is a little red light on your shoulder that once you hear somebody hit the word because, the red light starts going off, and what you know is they're about to launch into their opinion. And if I give you guys my opinion on something, I want you to take a look at what automatically happens in language inside your head, if you care at all. Okay, if you don't care at all, it's not going to matter. But if I were to tell you that I absolutely agree with and really, really like, that my opinion is I really, really like Mayor Ford up there in Toronto, what goes off in your brain in terms of language?
Probably going to discount other things you say
Yeah.
for your judgment.
Yeah. So a judgment goes off in your own brain, right?
Yeah.
And if I were to say I don't like him, what goes off in your brain?
Still a judgment, but a different one.
Yeah, that's right. And each one of those judgments can be generalized as either agreement or disagreement, right?
Yeah.
Do you all get that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there you go. That's it. That's all. Full stop. End of story. Lights out. That is as far as judgmental language will take you. To agreement or disagreement. And the last time I checked, if all of us agreed on something and then we strode on down to the bank and asked them to load our bank accounts with money, the bank won't do it. You want something to write down, just to think about, something I have really said a lot over the years and believe very strongly in, is that agreement is very overrated. Who gives a shit? Can you just call a play? So here's how I know that people fall into this trap, and you guys may have already experienced this at Colliers or somewhere else that you may have worked prior to. So you come in one morning and you have a breakdown. So you pull your team together, the people that you coordinate action with the most, into a conference room, and everybody talks about what happened, why it happened, what we should do, some things you agree with, some things you disagree with. You leave 50 minutes later, go back to work, and you come back the next day, and nobody did shit. Well, wait a minute, didn't we all agree? Oh, yeah, no, we all agreed. We call this a deja vu meeting. Anybody not had a deja vu meeting at least one time in their career? So look, you guys, we're talking about smart, ambitious people who are trying to make more money, who get it about how to get out there and, get clients and follow through and do all that kind of stuff, and yet they use the technology of language in a way that doesn't make any sense. They sit around and they do things in language that would be like what I was saying to Alex. They play video games with their language, expecting their bank accounts to fill with money. We all do this. We fall into our judgments. The most prosperous people I know have a lot less judgments than the least prosperous people I know. Because what they learn over time is nobody really cares that much. So what we're trying to at least have you consider is when you're on the field of play, don't use judgmental language as much. I mean, think about a sports team that falls into a bunch of judgmental language. Well, the reason we're not winning is because you're not doing your job. No, it's because you're not doing your job, blah, 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 blah. And what happens to those teams? They typically hit big losing streaks. Like, I think about the Indiana Pacers this year. They're on like a, bad losing streak now. And what you hear is that there's a fracture in the locker room and people aren't getting along. Everybody's in their judgments. Everybody's become positional. Same thing happened to the Los Angeles Lakers last year. I mean, it becomes something very obvious. And yet on the other side is this greenfield opening of different type of language that we could use that could actually change the scoreboard. And we call it performative language. And for this one, I need a little bit of an example. So in the downtown office there, Chris Markovic.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you stand up for me?
Can you see me doing this?
No, I got to ask the other Adam. Did he stand up?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. You can sit down. Thank you. So you guys, what just happened?
You stood up.
Yeah. Action. Well, I've been banging my gums for 15 minutes about bees and ants, and maybe you're sitting there in judgments inside your head like, when is this going to be over? I got real stuff to do that's going to make me money. This is ridiculous. This guy's full of shit. Whatever judgments are going on inside your head, maybe even Chris had a few of those, and all of a sudden I target my language at him. And Chris, when you look underneath performative, you notice there are 4 words there. Without us even going through them, which one of those 4 did I just use with you?
Oh, sorry, a request.
A request. This is not rocket science. I move my language to the right side of this map, and suddenly action takes place. Even if inside his head he's going, can you see me doing this? Why is he asking me to do this? This is weird. What is he going to make me do? Dance? I don't know. All this stuff, right? But your body still goes into motion. Using performative language is like tossing a paperweight at somebody. In spite of their judgments, their body will still go through a complicated set of actions to catch the paperweight. This is the only thing you can do with your mouth that actually happens when you say it and pushes yourself and other people into action. In any language, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, English, it doesn't matter. And the best way to look at performative language is actually through example. If you were, Chris, to drive to the nearest hospital and go into the emergency room and listen to the language between the doctors and the nurses and the support staff, would you hear more language for action or language for no action?
Action?
And if you were to then go to the airport and go up and listen to the air traffic controller talk to the pilots, you're going to hear more language for action or language for no action?
Action?
And why is that?
His lives are at stake?
Isn't it interesting? You put people in a real life or death situation, and whether they've been trained on it or not, they adjust to using the technology and language in the most productive way to make sure that people don't die. Now, we've already established, you guys, this game of identity is not a life or death game. You will not die. I promise you. But if we're looking for any conceivable advantage that we can get over our competitors, why wouldn't we use more language for action than language for no action between the hours of 8 and 5? And as I was mentioning to Chris, what's great about this is that it's not rocket science. There are only 4 performatives that you can use. The first one is a declaration. A declaration is a promise to the future, which means that this is something that you say you're going to do in the long term. I will grow my business by 20% top line in 2014. Every year at year end, you are asked to make a projection about the following year. And you want to notice how much energy gets consumed in that conversation. Well, I don't know. What about the market conditions? What if the market crashes again? I'm not really sure. What do you think? What's your opinion? All this kind of stuff. This is one of the most biologically perturbing things you can ask a human being to do because the future, by definition, is completely uncertain. The second performative is a commitment or a promise. Sorry to use a promise in both the definition and in the title, but a promise is a short-run commitment. So if you make a declaration that you're going to grow your business by 20%, the next thing you're going to automatically start doing is making short-run promises. Well, I'm going to make 100 cold calls a week. I'm going to set up 10 meetings a week. Those are short-run promises to help you achieve the long-run declaration. The third performative is a request. A request is a little bit interesting if you stop and think about it. A request, when I make a request of Chris to stand up, I'm promising to be satisfied if he stands up. A request is a promise to be satisfied if someone else does what you ask. So in the context of growing my business 20% this year, which is a declaration, and then I'm promising to do some cold calls, 100 a week, the request I might make is, hey, Chris, can you help me put together a database so I know who to call? So I might ask for assistance so that I can keep my promise and fulfill on my declaration. And then the last one is an assertion, and an assertion is a promise to provide evidence. So one of the things we really work with people on is to take action a little less off of their opinion, which may be an ungrounded, situation, and instead look for actual evidence before we actually change direction or change course. Is everybody with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
What does anybody notice is in common about all 4 of those performatives?
Well, promises.
I knew you guys were a smart group. What's the hardest thing to get people to do in business?
Keep your promises.
Well, even before they keep them, what do they have to do? Not that you're wrong about that, but in order to keep a promise, you got to make a promise, right?
Mm.
And why is it so hard to get people to make and keep their promises?
They have to deliver it.
Exactly. And we just filled out the right side of this map. See, a performative is a form of making a promise. Everything else is just chit-chat. It's the only thing that you can do that actually happens when you say it. Everything else is just talking about something. And the moment you make a promise, we're going to hold you to it. I am convinced that this is one of the reasons that people love sports. Sports takes the phenomenon of being a human being and condenses it down into a 3-hour performance on a Saturday. What you do in sports is you coordinate action to produce accomplishment, growth, and prosperity as measured by a touchdown or as measured by a basket or whatever. And the more that these people stay performative, the better the chance they have to win. The other thing you will notice about sports is when we sit in the stands and throw out our judgments about what the team should or shouldn't be doing, it doesn't do anything to alter the score. As a matter of fact, we have to pay to watch the people on the field play who use the performative language to coordinate the action to produce accomplishment, growth, and prosperity. Prosperity is in your capacity to keep these two types of language separate and to use more performative language during business hours so you can get more done in less time. The last time I checked, the bum in the park and the CEO of a Fortune 500 company have the exact same amount of time. One is just using way more performative language than the other. And that leads us to the last thing that we like for you to kind of take away from this, which is in the game of market force, you either make a promise or you don't. And if you make a promise, you either keep it or you don't. Nobody gives a shit for your reason. That's your judgment. You've never met a late person in your life. They're always late because, and then you have to wait 5 more minutes for them to get through their bullshit story. Who cares? And if you're not going to keep your promise, you either revoke it or renegotiate it before it's due, or you lose identity. So what we go for is your goal going forward during the day is to get your judgmental language down to about 20%. And I don't just mean the stuff out loud, by the way. I mean the stuff inside your own head. Let it go. Nobody really cares that much. You shouldn't either. And then, during lunch and after hours when we're having a beer or, on the weekends, whatever, yeah, cut it loose. All judgmental language. But when you're on the field, minimize it. Questions, comments? Make some sense? When I was in law school, I really saw this. A lot of my colleagues in law school would sit around and talk about how hard law school was. And I always just found that somewhat amusing because, I owned a business, I was married, I was doing other things, and I used to wonder, I was like, man, if you just took the time that you spent lamenting how hard law school was and actually doing the work, you could actually be done in half the time. The other example that I use, just because I think it's helpful, is we have 4 children, and when my kids were 5, 2, and 0, so our twins were just born, I really had this moment of clarity about language as a technology because I had kids at all different stages of installation of language. So our twins were 0, so they had no language. And so my ability to coordinate action with my twins was really, really hard. My wife, too. Because all they ever did was scream, and I didn't know if Robert had pooped his pants or wanted some milk or whatever. Okay, it was just a series of him yelling and me guessing. Ella was too, so she was able to string together a couple of words, and so my ability to coordinate action with Ella was improving. So she could say daddy milk or something like that. And so the coordination of action to produce accomplishment, growth, and prosperity in the family unit was getting a little easier. And then with Avery at 5, you know, my wife and I, we use these tools. I've told you guys that. We use these tools in our marriage to raise our kids. You know, really, we use this stuff a lot. And one of the things that we talk about is our intention is to raise responsible children. So that someday when they come to work for you at Collier's, they're not the person who comes in and goes, I don't like how things are going, and then expects the world to change. So when Avery walks into the room and says, Daddy, I'm hungry, or Daddy, I don't like this TV show, or Daddy, whatever, I don't move. My wife and I don't do anything because we don't want to teach her to use judgmental language and then action happens. So what we say to Avery is, do you have a request? And we're working with her at a young age to install the difference between judgmental and performative language. So again, when she comes to work for you at Collier's down the road, she doesn't come in with just some bullshit judgment about things, because everybody has an opinion. The people who make the money, who move the ball, are the people who can do something about it. And we want her to be able to come in and go, look, I don't like how things are going. Here's my evidence on that. Here's my declaration about how I can help to change it. Here's my promise on what I can do day to day, and here's my request on what I need from you. And we claim that's an upgraded, more responsible human being. Okay? All good?
Yep.
Great.
Awesome. So if you turn to session 4, we're skipping a single map in session 3 on workflow. We may come back around and pick that up. But what I want to do instead is spend the last 40 minutes or so on what's something that I think feels a bit logical now. Okay? So what we've established is there's this game of identity. Everybody has a style in the game. When you get out there in the game, the only thing you can use to play this game is language. That's the technology we invented. And then as you get out there in this game, what's going to happen is certain things are going to happen. They're going to cause people to fall into an increased amount of judgmental speaking, and it's going to be the thing that leads people into their survival strategies or into their styles. And we claim, and I've told you guys this throughout, that it's pressure. It's a breakdown. It's when, boom, something happens that you didn't want to have happen, and now you got to deal with it. All of you came in this morning with plans for what you're going to do for the day, and then boom, you had an email from the client you can't stand, or boom, one of the projects you were working on had a problem in it, or boom, there was a problem in a feasibility study, or whatever. Right? All of you had something like that even already today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay? So what we want to show you now is a mechanism, a tool for potentially working through that. So if you stand back and think about anybody who is really good at sports, business, politics, whatever, they seem to have a couple of things that they do really well. I'm sure there are other things, but at least 2 things they do really well is they stay focused no matter what's happening. And that ability to never lose focus gives them access to timing. And timing is the ability to take the next most powerful action regardless of the circumstances. In order for people to stay focused and apply timing, we claim they have to be on balance. So this conversation is on how to handle a breakdown. It is not a work-life balance conversation. That's a different conversation. This is about what to do when you are thwarted, about what to do when there is a breakdown. Right? Now, growing up for me, maybe for you, maybe not, but you can relate to this, I had teachers, I had coaches who would throw out things like, hey, keep your balance. And what I always felt like that is that it was a cliche. And a cliche is a trite phrase or expression, something that's overly familiar or commonplace. And so I actually found it quite frustrating when people would throw around terms like that or phrases like that I had a coach once, tennis coach, who would be like, hey, Travis, you got to keep your balance. And I'd be like, you know, Ronnie, that's not really helping me. I don't know when I lost my balance. I don't know what you're talking about. Give me something that helps me get back on track. Don't just give me something that's cliche. It's like telling somebody, here's a doorbell, but don't ring the doorbell, or here's a one-way sign with 2 arrows on it. Okay? Not very helpful. So our mechanism for balance is an actual map. And Audrey, how do you utilize a map? What do you instinctually do with a map? What are the 2 things you instinctually do for a map, or with a map?
I look at where my endpoint is and figure out how I'm going to get there.
Yes. Okay. And the only thing we skipped over is what's the other thing you have to know? You got to know the endpoint, and you got to know where you are. So how do you utilize a map? Just like she said, you walk into the mall, you look at the directory, there's a big X that says you are here, you find the store that you want to go to, and then you chart a path. That is how we utilize maps. So what we are going to show you here is, and look at this, it's an upward and it's a downward facing arrow. Look at the second thing on the downward facing arrow. It says judgment. What you will notice is that 9 times out of 10, unless you're just off the field, by the way, 9 times out of 10, when you're in a big judgmental conversation, it's because you've already lost your balance. And now we're trying to show you you're on the second level down, headed towards recurrent action, which means you're going to fall right into very predictable behavior around your style. I'm just trying to show you how these things map over. So when we go through this, you guys, what you may have the experience of if you install this map into your game is that you'll be able to see it sooner when you have lost your balance. And we're going to show you a very simple but not trivial mechanism for getting back on track quicker. And let me just make clear, you guys, you're already doing this. At least 51% of the time, to work at Colliers, to be an already successful person on this planet, you have to be doing what I'm going to show you today at least 51% of the time. And we only work with already successful people. So please don't be defensive here. But whatever your percentage is, we claim we can get your percentage up. If you're already doing this 75% of the time, let's get it up to 80, 85, 90% of the time. Those few times that you're not doing it, you're going to have a map to be able to do it. And for those of you that work on a team, you're going to have a common way to work through it. And for those of you that down the road are in a situation where you're hiring new people and you're bringing new people onto your team, you're going to have a way to show other people how to do it. This map for me, I don't know. I don't know how to, I don't want to oversell it. I put this map all over the office of the first company I owned, and it changed people's behavior with 0 training. Just having the map as a visual began to change people's behavior with 0 training. Okay? So, last thing before we look at the map itself is to just go really high level, really high big picture, introduce this great American philosopher and something that he said. You guys all know this great American philosopher? Yeah. He's not even a great American, okay? He's quasi-criminal. I get it. But he did say something when he was the heavyweight champion of the world that was pretty good. Everyone has a great strategy until they get punched in the face. And every single one of you today already has been punched in the face. Not literally, but figuratively. Your alarm clock didn't go off, didn't have enough gas in the car, there was an accident on the freeway, there was an email from a client you can't stand, you had to do this market force course as opposed to work on the proposal that you were planning to do. Whatever the breakdown was. So what we want to do is show you how to respond when you're getting punched in the face. First paragraph. We're going to read a couple of paragraphs here. First paragraph is meant to be a statement of fact, or at least the first sentence is. And what it says here is, projects are started to earn market force by accomplishing a particular future. Now, I know sometimes this sounds a little, strange at first, but just hear me out. What we've been saying in here, and we claim it's a fact, but you're still testing it, I get it. But we claim that every project you take on is driven by a commitment you have to increase your identity. That's the driver. And that's either on the field of business or off. So I know a couple of you have kids, and, families, and so even in a picnic, like for me, the example I use is I travel a ton, so I lose a lot of market force with my wife and kids when I'm away from home. So when I come home, I might say to my wife and kids, let's do something fun on Saturday, like go have a picnic. That is driven by love, for sure, but also a commitment that I have to increase my identity with my wife and children. And the only way to accomplish an increase in market force is what we just talked about a little bit in our last discussion, is to achieve the X that you promised by the time frame Y that you promised it. And if you don't, nobody really cares about your story, about why you didn't do it. That's just your judgment, and nobody cares. So if I wake up on Saturday and tell Allison, and I say, hey, Allison, you know what, I'm not going to go with you guys to the park. I'm going to go work instead. I just broke my promise. I'm going to crater my market force in that moment. Statement of fact is the claim. Every project you take on driven by commitment, you have to increase your identity. The only way to do that is to accomplish what you said you're going to accomplish in the time frame you said you were going to accomplish it. Second sentence. And this is where we really have to work on your mindset. If you've tuned out at all, you guys tune back in, because I have had people tell me that this helps them reorient to their lives at some level. We claim that inevitably when you take on a project, a breakdown happens. Even the word breakdown, Saurabh, is Saurabh there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, good. When I say the word breakdown, what is your judgment? Is a breakdown a good thing or a bad thing?
It sounds like something's not working out, so probably bad.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, let's be real, you guys. The word breakdown, for 97.99% of us, means, oh, that's a bad thing. Well, we're not even trying to change your judgment to that a breakdown is a good thing. What we want you to be is somebody who is absent of judgment. What would life be like if when breakdowns hit, people didn't fall into judgment at all? Think about that for a minute. How much drama, time, pomp, and circumstance is consumed by people having to have some kind of judgment around a breakdown? And the reason that we go here, you guys, is I'm going to, on Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to paint a picture of the rest of your life. You ready? You didn't expect this in your market force course today. Here is the rest of your life. You're going to have a breakdown. And then because you're an ambitious person, you're going to solve it. And then you're going to have another breakdown. And then you're going to figure out another solution. And then it'll be breakdown solution, 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 and then you will die. We call this a market force pep talk, by the way. Okay? Look, that's life. Life is breakdown solution, breakdown solution, breakdown solution. During the week, you have, 100 to 500 a day. On the weekends, you probably have more like 50 a day. But life is breakdown solution, and then you die. We meet too many people who are living life like, someday, when the breakdowns stop, I will get on with my life. And that is not how the world works. The only way to have less breakdowns in your life, actually, can anybody see it based on what we've already said? What's the only way to have less breakdowns?
Have breakthroughs.
Well, but typically what happens is a breakthrough many times leads to the next breakdown. So that will, now what we're going to go for is that we actually propose, don't have less breakdowns in your life, have more. Which at first sounds very counterintuitive to most people. Most people live in a common sense like, oh, I want to have less breakdowns. We say, no, you want to have more breakdowns, and you want to have a capability to get through those breakdowns quicker. The only way to not have more breakdowns, stop being ambitious. Don't take on any more projects. Every breakdown you have in your life is a consequence of the ambition you have. If you didn't have any ambition, you wouldn't be having any breakdowns. Think about that. Now, in the next sentence, things get a little bit more interesting. In an effective community, a breakdown is not a problem, and we would request that you write down our definition of a problem. This is one time we did not use a dictionary definition, and we would like for you to keep this in front of you over the next week. A problem is a person's story about his inability to perform on a project. A problem is a person's story about his inability to perform on a project. Which means if I start telling you guys I have a problem with this client, I have a problem with this colleague, what kind of language am I about to launch into? Well, it's pretty obvious. I'm about to launch into a bunch of judgmental language. Generally speaking, I'm going to be looking for a lot of agreement. So when I get coaching calls from clients who go, Travis, yeah, well, the reason I didn't get that deal is because I had a problem with the guy on the other side of the table, and he's a real jerk. For me as a coach, I go, oh, I got it, Jim. So do you want me to agree with your assessment, or do you want to get coached so that the next time you deal with a guy like that, you can make more money? Okay? We are just not interested in problems, and neither are teams. On a team, a problem is only a stop and an opportunity for learning. And for any of you that work on a team, why do you work on a team? Why do we put up with the brain damage of working with other people on teams? Can anybody see it? Why do we do it?
To learn from them.
What, say again?
To learn from them.
Yes! Who said that?
Audrey?
Yay. We claim that the purpose of a team is exactly what you just said, is to learn together. If you can learn more about how to increase the amount of money that goes into your bank account by yourself than you can working with us on this call, you should close your binder and you should leave. The only purpose of putting up with the brain damage of being around other people is to accelerate the learning in the environment. And Audrey, what do you learn the most from in your life? And I ask this just out of your own experience, not like a right answer, your own experience. Do you learn the most from the stuff you do really, really well, or the stuff that isn't working?
The stuff that isn't working.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting that most people live, like Sorab was saying, in a common sense that breakdowns are bad. And the moment you have an interpretation that a breakdown is bad, you may not tell other people that you're having a breakdown because you don't want to let on that something negative has happened and it could negatively impact your identity, and you, like every other human being, will protect your identity like you will protect your life. And yet what's interesting, as Audrey just said, is what all of us will say intellectually is what we learn the most from is what isn't working. And so what if we got a group of people to realize that it's not a bad thing to announce that they're having a breakdown? Matter of fact, it gives the rest of us a chance to contribute so that we can all learn. And the story that I tell, you tell somebody a fact, they'll learn. You tell them the truth, they'll believe. You tell them a story, they'll remember. So I try to tell stories so that you remember, so that we all remember. I was holding my infant daughter at the time, so this is 8 years ago now. I'm up in the middle of the night, as many of you will be when you have children. Okay. Couldn't sleep. She couldn't sleep. She's crying. I'm giving her a bottle, and I'm flipping through the channel, totally sleep deprived, and I come upon the Discovery Channel. I have no idea why I stopped. I have no idea what the overall show was about, but the next 5 minutes were kind of interesting, and I've never forgotten it. It happened to be a show about how animals respond to big winter storms. Okay, and they actually had tracking devices on a herd of buffalo and a herd of cattle in the same winter storm. And the same winter storm was coming. They both have that animal sixth sense to do something about it. Well, the herd of cattle turn away from the storm and run downwind. The herd of buffalo stampede at the storm. They have no idea why, just a complete opposite response to the same storm. And what they found is that most of the cattle died and a lesser number of the buffalo died. Because when the cattle run downwind, the storm picks up in ferocity, gets to a crescendo, ultimately catches up to the cattle, and they all freeze to death. The buffalo get to the storm before it's become huge, and they break through to the other side. I've always liked that visual for a high-performing team. What a high-performing team does is they wake up every morning and go, where are the breakdowns? Let's find the pain and let's fix it. No bullshit story, no judgment, no it's not my fault, shame, blame, guilt, all that other stuff. Just fix it and get on to the next breakdown. Life is breakdown, solution, then you die. Might as well have a new set of breakdowns. Here we go, guys. That's the mindset. Here's the mechanism. The mechanism is a very, very simple appreciation for what causes breakdowns. What it says here is the cause of the source of all breakdowns is intention. No intention, no breakdowns. No breakdowns, no intentions. In Australia, they call it no worries, mate. The cause of all breakdowns is intention. No intention, no breakdowns, no breakdowns, no intention. Does that make sense to folks?
Yep.
Awesome. And I mean it. Awesome. So here's my little story with a pop quiz at the end. Apply that to my little story. My ridiculous non-work related story. Okay? So I want you to envision that I wake up early on a Saturday morning out in Arizona, like Ken was saying. We get beautiful sunsets, sunrises out here in the middle of the desert. I'm only about 100 miles from Mexico, so it's, right in the middle of the desert. And I wake up really, really early on this Saturday morning, 20 to 5, only because I couldn't find a better picture. And I think to myself, my intention is to have a nice breakfast. Okay? So I then think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go old school. I'm going to read, I'm going to grab a bowl of cereal. I'm going to run outside, read the newspaper. Pretty soon I'm going to have to change this. There won't be any newspapers left. I get it. But that's my plan to accomplish my intention. So I hop out of bed. I spend 5 minutes deciding on what cereal to have because I'm an authority guy and I got to run a bunch of analytics. I finally pick the cereal with the most sugar, of course. I pour the cereal in the bowl. I grab a spoon. I run outside and I get the newspaper. I put everything on the kitchen table. I turn around on my head for the refrigerator, and I open the refrigerator, and what happens?
No milk.
Boom. And what's going to be the first thing I say to myself when I realize that there's no milk?
Shit.
Exactly. Okay, now, you guys know me, and so that's, of course, going to be what I say, because I've got, I just got the worst mouth on the planet. But whether you say this word or some variation thereof, it's a visceral response to the breakdown. So a lot of times people, they get a little philosophical, and they're like, what do you mean by a breakdown? This is what we mean. Anything that has you thwarted, that has you say in some kind of visceral reaction, oh, shoot, oh, darn, oh, damn, whatever the language is for you, it's the moment of being thwarted. And if you start paying attention, you guys, you will notice you have this like 100 to 500 times a day where you just find yourself going, oh, shoot, oh, shoot, oh, shoot. And every single one of those represents a crossroads where you can lose your balance and waste a lot of time or stay on track, keep your balance. Now watch me lose my balance in this silly little non-work related example. So boom, no milk in the refrigerator, and then I just really go down the downward facing arrow. The emotional upset, the anger, can't the guy just have a nice Saturday? The judgments, hey Allison, what's going on here? Why didn't you pick up more milk? Why are kids drinking so much milk? This is bullshit. And then the recurrent action, which is to pick a fight very early in the morning on Saturday. My wife is not a morning person, so this is a real breakdown. And now Saturday's ruined before it ever started. Now I know that people look at this and they go, okay, come on, really? But I'm telling you guys, the fundamentals of what happens in a breakdown is exactly the same. I don't care how many zeros you put next to it. And I'll tell you stories about how I utilize this map to make a lot of zeros and how other people have too. When you understand the fundamentals of breakdown, you can see them. You can see it happening to yourself. You can see it happen to other people, and you can turn it around. Now, Use what we said in that first couple of sentences there, the last paragraph, and apply. And who cares if you get a wrong answer? Don't worry about your identity. Just blurt out instinctually answers to the next two questions. What is the breakdown in my story?
Being no milk.
Exactly. Okay? Well done. The breakdown, no pomp, no circumstance, no drama, none of that stuff is just the moment of, oh shoot, there's no milk in the refrigerator. Boom. That's it. That's all. Now, what's the source or the cause of the breakdown?
Your initial intention of what you wanted to do.
Very good. And what was that?
I want to have breakfast.
Healthy breakfast.
Well done, you guys. Okay? The intention. So you all get, if I had no intention, and what was my intention? Does anybody remember the language? It wasn't healthy breakfast, it was a
Nice breakfast.
nice breakfast. If I had no intention to have a nice breakfast, I would have gone all day and never realized that there was no milk in the refrigerator.
Right.
The only thing that connects you emotionally to a breakdown is because you have something you intend. If you have no intention, you will have no breakdowns. So here's the thing, you guys. Most people will answer, not most, a lot of people will answer this question of what my intention was, and they will say, to have cereal, which is the bear trap none of you fell in, which is good. What you all realized is my real intention was have a nice breakfast. And why is this an important thing to understand?
Because you still have opportunities to have a nice breakfast. It's just
Exactly. And if Audrey were at my house on this Saturday morning, which would be really weird, okay, but she was on my team, and she started watching me go on that downward-facing arrow, one of the things she might do for me as my team member is, whoa, Travis, time out. What was your intention? And as ridiculously simple as that sounds, you guys, like, Audrey, if you found me in the woods, running around in a circle, pissed off because I can't get out of the woods, what might you hand me by way of a tool?
Because of this scenario, or just in general?
No, separate question. Just, if you, yeah, no, they're not related. I'm a weird guy. I get mad about no milk and I run in circles in the woods, okay? But if I was running in circles in the woods, what would you hand me to help me get out of the woods?
A map or a compass.
Yeah.
By direction.
Exactly. Asking people what their intention is like handing somebody a compass. And what we want you guys to write down, and I hope you never feel like I oversell market force. I at least pride myself on attempting to not oversell it. It is not rocket science. But what I'm going to ask you to write down here, it changed my life, to be honest, and I've had other people tell me that it's changed their lives. Write this down, please. In the moment of the breakdown, don't focus on the breakdown. Focus on your intention. If you want to immediately start separating yourself from other people, if you want to change your identity in terms of being able to handle pressure situations better than other people, do this. And I've been doing this course long enough that even sometimes during the course, a breakdown will happen, like the IT will go out, okay? So we lose live meeting. The phone stays up, but we lose live meeting. And I'll say to the group, I'll go, hey, just go over to the conference room window and look outside at the cubes. Look outside at the office. And watch how different people respond to this breakdown. And what you will notice is the people who are, doing okay, there will be a lot more drama. The people who make a lot of money, no drama. Because they're just completely connected to what their intention is. So the people, who lose their minds, like, this is such bullshit, what's going on with the IT, I can't get anything done, this place sucks, those people don't make as much money. The people just go, well, given my intention to be prosperous, what's the next most powerful thing for me to do? You know what, I'll just call a client and go have a coffee. I'll just call a client and go to lunch. And we just keep moving. They stay focused on what they intend, and they apply timing, which is the ability to take the next most powerful action regardless of the circumstances. And the reason it works, you guys, remember what I said is you're already doing this at least 51% of the time to be working at Colliers. You cannot be somebody who works at Colliers if you're on the downward facing arrow over 50% of the time. You won't make it. The environment won't let you stay. But the reason that it works is that it automatically puts you on the upward facing arrow. When you focus on the breakdown, it'll automatically throw you on the downward facing arrow. When you focus on your intention, it'll automatically put you on the upward facing arrow. And the upward facing arrow is, well, let's see, what else could I do given my intention? Well, let's see, given real life in terms of money and time, what are the real things I could do? Okay, let me try one of those. And it'll either work or it won't. Life is breakdown, solution, then you die. Let's at least not have the same fucking breakdown. I tell people, here, write this down, you guys. Breakdowns are not bad or good. The same breakdown is catastrophic. The breakdowns are not bad or good. They're inevitable. The same breakdown is catastrophic. You want to piss me off, call me with the same breakdown. You call me up and say, hey, look, I got a breakdown. I don't have any judgment around that. It's like, yeah, let's breakdown solution. Let's go. Let's figure it out. What are the possibilities? What are the opportunities? Let's go. Let's go. You call me up and say you're having the same breakdown with a control person in your life. You call me up and say you're having the same breakdown getting certain reports out to your clients. You call me up with the same breakdown, I'm going to fire you. Because that means that either I'm a shitty coach or you're a shitty player. Okay? So, in my little story, given my little thing about my intentions to have a nice breakfast, what are the possibilities? What else can I do? Come on, 5 seconds. Just throw some things at me.
Have oatmeal.
Go out.
I can have oatmeal. What else?
You can put yogurt on your cereal.
I can put yogurt on the cereal. Yep, what else?
Or buy milk.
Go buy milk. And people like to put comma jackass after that, by the way, yes.
Go to a diner.
Go to a diner. Yeah, what else can I do?
Try fasting.
Yeah, I could change my intention. You know what? My intention is now to have a good fast. Okay? Yeah. I could go get milk. I could put yogurt or Coke or vodka or orange juice on the cereal. I could make something else, oatmeal or eggs. I could go buy a cow. I could throw my kids on an airplane and fly up to Toronto and have a nice breakfast. I mean, guys, possibilities. This is where the learning takes. Oh, wait a minute. I've been out of town for weeks. My wife has to raise these 4 tyrants that we call children. What if I drove down to Starbucks and picked up a coffee and a scone for me and her and served her breakfast in bed? That might even increase my market force around here. The point is possibilities. Something that could happen, but probably won't. And the rule in the conversation for possibilities is no judgmental speaking. And the reason that we put that out there, you guys, is this is one of the reasons that children learn so much quicker than adults. They don't have a judgmental view onto the world. That costs too much money. You're stupid. That's a bad idea. That won't work. They just throw possibilities. And then we got to factor in real life. I get it. Opportunities. Opportunities is when we start factoring in money and time and everything else. And then we make a call. We make a play call. 32, red dog, on 3, hut, go. And some of it's going to work and some of it won't. We get it. In our model, the installation of this map has 2 fundamental outcomes for success. Number 1 is you get a group of people who spend less time on the downward facing arrow, which means they get through their breakdowns quicker. Doesn't mean they have less breakdowns. Number 2, they have new and different breakdowns. There is no number 3 that says that they have less breakdowns. This is what I was saying earlier. I'm convinced that one of the biggest misconceptions about high-performing people and high-performing teams is that they got it lucky, they got it easy, they don't have that many breakdowns. It's actually it's the reverse. High-performing teams, high-performing people have more breakdowns. they have a capability, they have a tolerance level, they have an ability to get through more breakdowns quicker than other people. And again, I will ask you guys, if you're not having new and different breakdowns, what does that mean?
You don't have any.
Say it again?
No intention.
Well, that could very well be, or the intention is to be stuck in a lot of drama.
Or you're having the same breakdown.
Yep, and if you're having the same one over and over, what does that mean?
That you're not moving forward, you're not seizing the opportunity from it to grow.
And Audrey, the word that you used before about the purpose of the team?
Learning.
No learning. And this is why we put gang and team on this map, you guys, okay? And we put our definition of both of those. I've got those written on the screen here. See, a gang is a group of individuals fighting for identities at each other's expense, and there's no learning in the environment. I have to be right, you have to be wrong, I have to win over you. A team is something totally different. A team is a group of very disagreeable people. If you work on a team and everybody agrees about what we, should be doing going forward, I get worried that people are redundant or they're not telling the truth. Because if you are a good player in this game, you're going to have a viewpoint on how to get to the future that we intend. So we don't mind disagreeable people, but we want people aligned. That once we call a play, we run the play, and if it works, we keep doing it. If it doesn't work, we don't fall into, well, you were wrong and I was right. We just go right back and say, given our intention, what's the next play? Given our intention, what's the next play? Okay, so about 5 minutes left. Any questions at this point from anybody? So if you're somebody who is still struggling with styles, which I respect, what I hope you've seen today is that by managing now between your judgmental and performative language, especially when you're in a breakdown, can be the difference between being an average player and being a top-level player. As a matter of fact, the guy that runs Southeast Europe for Colliers, a guy named Hadley Dean, when I showed him this model 100 years ago now, he goes, oh, I get it. This map is the difference between winners and losers in life. So it's a little bit of a judgmental way to put it, but I've always liked the way that he framed it. It's the difference between winners and losers in life. And the more you can stay on that upward-facing arrow, and I'll give you just one bit of social evidence, not a company I've worked with, but how you can read the world that, using this. So 100 years ago, when I was in MBA school, the case study in MBA school on how to handle a big problem was Lexus, because Lexus had a recall on one of their car lines. I mean, actually, if you look at GM, if you guys have followed what's going on with GM at all, they didn't deal with this breakdown from 8 years ago, and they're like the cattle that ran downwind, and now the storm has caught up to them, and it's going to be catastrophic. It's going to be billions of dollars in liability for them, and they fucking earned it the way that they handled that breakdown. They earned $1 billion in liability by turning away from an ignition switch they would go in to drive when people were in park or whatever. It's horrifying. But Lexus didn't do that. So does anybody know what the tagline is for Lexus?
Pursuit of perfection.
Yeah. So if you had a tagline, Pursuit of Perfection, and you have a defect in the car, is defect in the car consistent with perfection?
No.
No. So it's clearly a breakdown. The way they handled the breakdown is, and I don't know if it was a person or if it was leadership or I don't know who over there, but somebody over there was so connected to intention that what they decided was to run a perfect recall. They said, look, we're here. We can't go back in Wayback Machine. We can't undo the breakdown we're having. Let's run the perfect recall. So most recalls are very adversarial. You got to come at this time because your last name starts with a C, and if you don't come at this time, then we absolve ourselves of responsibility for the problem in your car. It's very, adversarial, legal. They sent it from customer service. We'll come pick up your car. They left you with a nice car, not a crappy loaner car. They fixed your car. They washed your car. They waxed your car. They took the dents out of your car. They brought your car back to you. They left the present on the front seat. They used the breakdown to increase their identity by acting consistent with their intention, no matter that they were having a breakdown. Do the same. This is one of those really preachy moments in the course. You're going to have breakdowns. Go out, get really good at handling breakdowns. The better you get at handling your own breakdowns, the better your team gets at handling its breakdowns, the bigger the breakdown you'll be able to handle for your clients, and the more money they'll put after, the big number on your paycheck, because the bigger the breakdown you handle for other people, the more people will pay you. That's how the game works. Fair?
Yeah.
Good. All right, you guys, I'll hit you up with the recording and with a little bit of homework on this. And really the homework is to just stay on top of styles, and also now to this week, just watch what happens when you have a breakdown and see if you can apply this to get you through it a little quicker, faster, better than you were able to get through it yesterday.
Hey, Travis.
Okay? Yeah.
Quick question, Lucas here. Is there any style that just naturally has less judgmental language and more performative, or is that kind of just more your person?
Well, it's a great question, Lucas. So I'll answer it this way. Number one, what causes a breakdown for different styles is different.
Okay.
Okay? So it'll always look different. So you may not be having, if you are an influence person, for example, Lucas, and I'm an authority, what causes a breakdown for you is when things slow down. What causes a breakdown for me is when things speed up.
Right.
So we may not even be having the same experience around the same things that's happening in the world. Okay, so what is a breakdown for different styles is different. So I just wanted to make that clear. But to your question, this is more about ambition.
Right.
The more ambitious you are, the quicker and more determined you are to get through breakdowns. The less ambitious you are, the more desire you have to live in some drama and to, get into more judgmental language. So, and that's regardless of style.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Thank you guys very much. Have a good rest of your week, and I will, and then we're off next week because you have Gerald Clerk's training, so we'll be on in 2 weeks, okay? So please keep this stuff alive, and we'll pick up in 2 weeks.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thanks,
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Bye.
The continuation